Good morning, my dear friends. On this incredibly difficult morning, it goes without saying that we're learning in the schus that all of those that are wounded, give them a miraculous recovery. All of those that were abducted, Hashem should bring them home safely to their families. And in general, that we should be zeichet to the biggest miracle and Yeshua that can possibly be. And the words "we want Mashiach now" ring true and loud. We're learning Parshas Bereshis from Chelek Chaf, Sicha Aleph, and we're all feeling rather hopeless. But one thing
Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting a moment. I just want to tell you that as I was trying to connect, I suddenly heard I'm in Israel, Beitar Elite, and suddenly the siren ran off, took my phone, ran to this room, just entered it. I'm sitting here in the room, in our safe room, hearing the booming outside. And I just wanted you all to know that. That's all. Okay, continue.
Elisheva Hashem should watch over all of you in that safe room, and Eini Hashem Elokecha, that all of Israel should become one safe room already, immediately. And feel free to keep us surprised, please. And we're all with you. If people think that we should begin with a Kapitel Tehillim, please let me know how people want to proceed. We could begin with a Kapitel Tehillim.
Yes.
Elisheva, you want to lead us? Can you?
I would rather not. Thank you.
Okay. Lamanatseach Mizmor LeDavid, Yancha Adonai b'yom tzara, Yisagefcha Shem Elahei Yaakov, Yishlach Ezracha Mikodesh u'mitzion Yisadeka, Yiskar Kol Minchesecha va'elascha Yidashne Sela, Yiten Lecha Chilvavecha v'chol Atzascha Yimale, Niranina b'shuasecha u'v'shem Eloheinu Nidgol, Yimale Adonai Kol Mishalesecha. Ata Yadaiti Ki Yashia Adonai Mashiachai Ya'aneu Mishmei Kachai Bigvuris Yesha Yaminai. Ele Varecha Ve'ele Vasusim V'anachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Naskir. Hema Karu V'nafalu V'anachnu Kamnu V'nisoidad. Adonai Hashia Hamelech Ya'anenu V'yayim Karenu. The Rashi that the Rebbe addresses in the Sikha cannot be more to the point of what we're experiencing now, although the Rebbe takes it in a different direction, as you'll see, but it's uncanny how it speaks to what's going on now. Seif Aleph, again, Parshas Bereshis, Chelek Chaf, Sicha Aleph. Al Bereshis bar Elikim, maybe Rashi is Ma'amarish Rabbi Yitzchak. And the words Bereshis bar Elikim, Rashi brings down what Rabbi Yitzchak says. The Torah should have begun with the first mitzvah that the Eibishter gave the Jews. So what's the reason that it begins with the story of creation? Mishum, and here Rashi quotes the pasuk from Tehillim, that the Torah begins with Bereshis because Hashem wants to broadcast a message to us. Koyach ma'asav higid la'amoy. The strength of the Eibishter's actions was taught, was broadcasted to his nation. Laseis lahem nachalas goyim, to give to them the inheritance of the other nations. V'umasbir, and Rashi explains, Shazuhi hatshuva l'taina shalom ha'olam, that this is the answer to the other nations. When the nations will say, Listim atem, you are colonizers, you are taking things that don't belong to you. Shekavashtem artsa shivas goyim, in you conquering the land that belonged to the 7 nations, him oimim lahem, the Jews will retort, Kala arish halakadosh baruch hu he, the whole land belongs to the Eibishter. Hu bara, the whole world belongs. Hu bara, he created, v'nasna lasher yashar be'enav, and gave it to who he deems proper. Midiyuk l'shoinei shel Rashi, from parsing the particular terminology that Rashi uses. And Rashi uses a particular literary device that we're familiar with from Torah Sfarim. Loi hayat tzarech lahaskil es haTorah. The Torah shouldn't have begun with this. And then he uses the term umatam pasach bevreshis. And what is the reason that the Torah opens with Bereshis? And in doing this, sheshayna min hanemar b'midrashim achadim, he diverts, he changes, he diverges from the terminology used in other midrashim. For instance, lo hayat tzarech lichtay b'satera umatam kasav miBereshis ukadaymeh. This shouldn't have been written at all in the Torah, or what is the reason that it was written starting with Bereshis in general? But it's more eclipsed in the other midrashim. Umatam kasav mi Bereshis, whereas Rashi brings down Rabbi Yitzchak, who says hayat tzarech lahaskil es haTorah, and lo yahaya ella, and also umatam pasach bevreshis. And move on. So it's understood from this that the question that Rabbi Yitzchak is asking, that Rashi is citing, Eina al etzem ksivas haparshiyos halalu, is not about why these parts of the Torah are included, mi Bereshis v'ad hachodesh b'Torah, from starting from Bereshis till Parshas Bo in Shemais, ella al kach shenichtavu b'tchilas haTorah, but rather the question is, why does the Torah open with this? Asher l'cha'era, seemingly, ha'isa tzricha ha'aschala liyos ha'chodesh zelachem shehi mitzvah rishona shenistavu by Yisrael. Seemingly, the Torah should have begun with ha'chodesh zelachem, which is the first mitzvah that Bnei Yisrael were commanded. And seemingly, because the answer that's given is that when the nations will attack you, will challenge your ownership of Eretz Yisrael, so from this it comes out that in order to avert the claim that you are stealers, that you are colonizers, that you don't belong, ein dai be'etzem ksivas haparsha Bereshis b'Elokim b'mokem kol shehu b'Torah, ela hitzricha likasev b'tchilas haTorah. So it seems that from what Rashi does here, and what he's teaching us, it would not have been enough for the Torah to assert the Jews' ownership of Eretz Yisrael elsewhere, but it had to be at the very beginning. The Torah has to begin with this. Lefizeh tamua. But if this is our working thesis, then the Rebbe says, then we have a question. It's a wonder. Afim haya initial Bereshis kasav la'achar hachodesh nitan haya ladasha kol ha'aretz hakadosh baruch hu hu bara v'nasna. Why do we insist that it has to be at the beginning? If it would have been written after hachodesh zelachem, we would have been able to broadcast the same message. Umadua lo heisazu tshuva maspekes l'taina shedaleil. Why would it not be enough for the claim of the other nations for this assertion that Bnei Yisrael own Eretz Yisrael because it was given to them by Hashem, who created the entire world and owns the entire world? Why would that not be enough? Why hatshuva hi dafka kasher pasach bevreshis? Why does it have to be dafka in this way, that the Torah begins with this assertion? Kain yesh lahavin, the Rebbe says we also have to understand If indeed the Torah should have only begun with HaChodesh Zelachem, the first mitzvah in Parshas Bo, Koloimar Shemitzad Torah Atzma Tzricha Haskala Lios Loi Mibereshis. This is to say that seemingly, from the perspective of how the Torah should be, it shouldn't have started with Bereshis. Or maybe you could even go as far as saying that this shouldn't have been written in the Torah altogether. And especially in the very specific way that Rabbi Yitzchak teaches us this, it seems very categoric. He says, "Loi hayatzarech lahaskil ela Torah ela mehachodesh zelachem." It's a very, very specific way in which he's asserting that seemingly this shouldn't have been. And this proves that it was necessary, although it shouldn't have been, but it was somehow necessary. So now the Rebbe says we have to understand, how is it possible that in order to counter claims of the other nations, you go and you change the whole seder of the Torah Shebechsav, and maybe it seems that you also add things that shouldn't have been lechatchila. And even more, the Rebbe says, if it's about, again, countering the claim, it seemingly would have been enough bimsiras hamayna ba'al peh midar ladar, that this could have been transmitted, this information, that the Eibishter created the world, that the whole world belongs to the Eibishter, that the Eibishter gives the land to whoever Hashem deems proper. This could have all been broadcasted ba'al peh, from generation to generation. Ki Torah sheba'al peh kula, in the same way that we have a whole Torah sheba'al peh. And indeed, the Rebbe says we find in the Gemara, Shekavia ben Psisa, Heishiv Latanas b'nei Africa, that Gavia, the son of Psisa, answered a claim of those from Africa, Shatanu Eretz Canaan Shalanuhi. They said Eretz Canaan belongs to us. And he answered them behezber acher, with a different explanation, she'ena kosuv befeirush, which is not written explicitly b'Torah shebachtav. V'chein hatshuva levnei Yishmael ulevnei Keturah tanasam Eretz Canaan shalanu v'shalachem. And he also answered later with the same counterclaim to the children of Yishmael, the children of Hagar, of Keturah, when they said Eretz Canaan belongs to us. And in the footnote, the Rebbe brings down what his answer was, and there's back and forth about this should be seen as an answer or not. But the point is, the question is, why does it have to be in the Torah Shebachsav? Why could this information not be imparted orally?
Wait, Rivky, can I ask something? I don't understand what I'm missing something. Maybe I just missed something. What should be in the Torah? What's in the Torah B'Shebiksav? This is Rashi telling us this.
But Rashi is revealing what the word Bereshis means and why
that's already
that.
So that's already Baal Peh. That's already Torah Sheba'al Peh.
But the way the Rebbe always learns Rashi, that Rashi is megala what's in the Torah Shebachtav.
Isn't that what Torah Sheba'al Peh is? Isn't Torah Sheba'al Peh what is megala b'Torah Shebechsav? I'm just trying to understand. I'm not trying to. I don't understand what's going on here. I just don't. I'm missing something.
Rashi asks, why does the Torah start with this? He's drawing attention to what the Torah is telling us in the very first pasuk. And let's remember that Rashi is pshat. So yes, there's a whole siya, yam of Torah Sheba'al Peh. But Rashi's pshat, you can't learn Chumash without Rashi. Rashi is megala. Sorry?
That's true, but it's not in the verse, is what I'm saying. What Rashi's saying is not in the verse.
But the words in the Torah are Bereshis bara Elikim es hashamayim v'es haaretz. So Rashi is telling us How do you read this? You read this, that the Eibishter created the world and is the owner, the indisputable owner of the world.
Right. Yes, but that
Yeah,
it belongs
that's it.
to us. Okay, so you're saying because of that, that's enough that it's still Torah Shabbat. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Mikach Nisan Lahasik. So from this we can conclude Shapazach Bereshis, that by starting with Bereshis, Ein Rak Mayna L'Umas Ha'olam, that by starting with these words, this is not just a counterclaim, a retort, an assertion to the other nations. Ela inyan zeh chashuv gam liYisrael atzmam b'toyrosam u'ba'avodas Hashem shelahem. Okay, so especially at this moment, and especially on a college campus, we could go in a whole different direction. That's what the Rebbe says here, that forget about the rest of the nations. We need to know this. This is so important for us to know. But as you're going to see, the Rebbe is now going to go in a different direction as to what this means, b'pnimius haTorah, on the idea of kibush, zayin, umois, etc. And the Rebbe is saying here that we have to understand that perhaps for the other nations, it would have been enough for it to be for us to know this in the Torah Shabbal Peh, for this to be later in the Torah. But the fact that the Torah opens with this, and that seemingly the Torah changes the order and adds that this is absolutely pivotal for us in our avodah, in our learning of the Torah. And so therefore, we can also understand the reason we can understand the pasuk in Tehillim that Rav Yitzchak brings, which is again koyach mas of higid la'amai. Hashem told his nation about the power of his deeds, laseis lahem nachal goyim, to give to them the inheritance of the nations. And in this pasuk, ein muskar shezehu mayna l'umas ha'olam. It is not mentioned that this is a counterclaim to the nations of the world. Ela higid la'amoy. The Eibishter wants to broadcast this to his nation. K'loimar, that is to say, koyach masav higid la'amoy chashuv liYisrael atzmam. It is imperative for the Jews themselves, kidei sheYisrael lo yachshavu she'al yedei kovsham es artsa shivas goyim heim listim, in order that the Jews should understand that by conquering the 7 lands, they are not, God forbid, stealing, colonizing somebody else's land. And therefore, at the very beginning, we're being taught the Eibishter created the world. How are we going to understand this now on a deeper level, on a completely different level? Hadvarim yuvnu lefi hahesber hapnimi shel hatzemach tzedek l'maymer zeh. We're now going to understand this on a completely different level based on the explanation that is given by the Tzemach Tzedek. Hamashmos haruchnis shel chavashtem artze shivas goyim. The spiritual understanding of conquering the land that belonged to the 7 nations, hi hakibush, is a certain type of conquering. Which type? Avoidasam shel Yisrael ba'artzus u'ba'olam b'chlal. It is the spiritual work of Bnei Yisrael in the material, corporeal, physical aspects of the world. Kasha Yisrael koivshim, when Bnei Yisrael conquer in this way, leichim u'menatzlim as divrei harashush shel ha'olam l'shem shemayim. They take and they utilize divrei rishus, things that are permissible, but we use it l'shem shemayim, for the sake of heaven. Heim moitziim oisam. Through this, the Jews take out these aspects, michlal goyus v'chulin, take it out from the rubric or category of goyishkeit, or something that is pedestrian. Vehem nasim, and through the avodah they become either tashmishi kedusha or davar shebekdusha, or kedusha, va'af kache kachim. That through our avodah of taking mundane aspects, we can transform them so that they become sublime, so that they become aspects, physical things that are used for kedusha. They become an actual holy thing. They could even become part of the kache kedushim. Al kach toyanim hagoyim listim atem. So when the nations of the world see what we're doing, they say, listim atem. What are you doing? You're stealing from divrei rishus, and you're bringing it into the tchum of kedusha. Stop robbing us. Devarim elu hanimtzoim tachas mimshelas hagoyim. These are aspects of the universe that are found under the sovereignty of the other nations. Heim litanas ha'umas in yanei chulin. And according to the other nations, these are chol. They're secular, they're mundane, they're pedestrian. V'shayachim lahem. And they belong to the other nations. Kinemar b'medrash, sheYaakov ve'Esav cholku b'nei es ha'olamos, like the Medrash explains. The Yaakov and Esav divided the worlds. Yaakov natal es ha'olam haba. Yaakov took as his portion olam haba. Ve'Esav es ha'olam hazeh. Esav took this world. Ulefichach, and therefore, litanas umas ha'olam. So based on this division of olam hazeh and olam haba, so according to the claim of the nations, avodas hakibush. So when we engage in this type of spiritual conquest, shebe'emtzu usa marchib gvul hakadusha, and through the agency of this avodah of conquest, we widen and enlargen the parameters of kedusha. He gezela. This is a form of embezzling. This is a form of stealing. Hatshuva al kachi. The answer is Bereshis bar Elokim. Mimcha hakol. Everything comes from Hashem. Kol ha'aretz shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu He. The entire universe belongs to Hashem. Hu bira v'nasna lasher yasher be'enav. He created it and he gave it to who he deemed it belonged to. He matzah osam shel dvarim elu b'reshus ha'umos. So the fact that these things are found in the reshus of the other nations, b'reshus hachulin, in the reshus, in the category of the pedestrian, lifnei avodas ha'adam, before our avodah, he mipnei b'rtzaina nasna lahem. It's because the Eibishter gave it lechatchila to the other nations. Kein hayiratzon Hashem ekev chet eitz hadas. This was Hashem's will because of eitz hadas, which caused a commingling and an amalgam of Tevera. So it was Hashem's will. Shedvarim elu yimasru lahem, that these aspects of the universe should be imparted to the other nations. But this was for the purpose that afterwards that it was Hashem's will that he should take it away from them and give it to us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu roitze sheYisrael yikchu dvarim elu min ha'umos v'yashivu oisam ligvul hakadusha. What the Eibishter wants from us now is that we should take these aspects of the world, these material, corporeal aspects that are in the realm or under the sovereignty of the other nations, and we should bring them back within the parameters of holiness, just like it was before the Chet Eitz Hadas. And how should we do this? Al Yidei Avodasam, through our Avodah, Kibush. We should spiritually conquer this. So now we're in a position to understand the words of Rabbi Yitzchak on a deeper level, that the Torah shouldn't have begun with this. It should have begun with the Chodesh Zelachem. Why? Because the Torah transcends by far the creation of a physical strata. V'chein min ha'avoda in Ma'aseh Bereshis, in Yonei ha'olam, avodas hakibush, and be'etzem, the Torah transcends the whole avoda of Ma'aseh Bereshis, the whole avoda of extracting and reappropriating all of this physical matter and taking it and conquering it from the Umas Ha'olam and bringing it back in the Gvul of Kedusha. And you could see this in the microcosmic realm. When you look at a person who's working a job, when a Jew is learning Torah or he's engaged in a mitzvah, then you could see that this person in manifest form is completely immersed in holiness. And when immersed in holiness, that Jew transcends the world. However, but when a person is engaged with or busy with pedestrian acts, divrei reshus, working a job, even when this is being done l'shem shemayim, adayin elahim ma'asecha udrachecha, but it's still things we're doing, right? It says that kol ma'asecha yu l'shem shemayim, but it's still ma'asecha. Okay, you should know him in all your ways, but it's still your ways. Adayin elahim inyane rishus. They're still divrei rishus. And a person desires this. Everybody needs money. We need money because we have bodily needs. We need this to sustain ourselves. We need this to vivify ourselves. And this all comes from the nefesh habahamis. Lefi hezber zeh. So when we understand this deeper explanation of kibush ha'amim based on the Tzemach Tzedek, misgaberes ha'she'ela hamuskeres le'il b'sif aleph umatam posach b'Bereshis. So now the same question that was asked on the level of Pshat now is asked on this deeper level. Why does the Torah begin with mention of this avodah dafka? If this avodah of conquering the physical material realm and bringing it to Kedusha is lower in stature or in the hierarchy from learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, yes, it's true that it's necessary to write about it in the Torah, in order that we should know that it's necessary for us to engage in this avodah. And that when we engage in this avodah, we are not embezzling, we are not stealing, we are not colonizing. But how is it possible? If the avodah of bira hanitzaitis in physical matter and bringing it to the tchum of kedusha is lower than Torah mitzvahs, then why is this the psicha shel haTorah? Why is this the beginning? And isn't it true that what is presented to us earlier in the Torah indicates its hierarchy in its rank in importance? So how could this be presented as the first thing? So in Seif Dalet, the Rebbe explains, Echad hasberim shenitan loymar al kachu. One of the explanations is the following. Omnam, it's true. Avodas hakibush hanikras b'loshen hachasidus avodas habirurim nechusa milimud haTorah o mikiyum hamitzvos b'seder hadargais. Yes, it's true that in the regular hierarchy and in terms of categoric ranking, avodas habirurim, the spiritual work of extracting the sparks of divinity, the nitzaitis kedusha, from all physical matter, and in that way bringing what is pedestrian to kedusha, it's true that it ranks lower than learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. Kedilil, as has already been mentioned. Achlim reisais, but despite this, hatachlis ha'elyona b'vriyas ha'olam, the goal, the stated mandate of the creation of the universe, it's famously that the Eibishter desired a dwelling place in this lower realm. V'hakavana hi ki bi'urei shel admar hazaken, and the kavana for the intention of the Eibusher to have a dir lo yizbarach b'tachtoinim, as the Alter Rebbe explains, is l'tachtoin she'ein tachtoin lemata himenu. There's so much tachtoin vis-a-vis the Eibusher, right? But the Alter Rebbe explains that what the Eibusher wanted was a dir b'tachtoinim in the tachtoin she'ein tachtoin lemata himenu, in the lowest realm that doesn't have, there's nothing lower than that. Umatarazu mismameshes, and this goal is concretized al yedei avodas habirurim, through this avoda of refining physical matter, beyeser oimek me'asher al yedei liman haTorah v'kiyum mitzvos. This stated desire and goal of the Eibusher for Dir Lo Yisbarach is effectuated and concretized in a much deeper fashion through kibush ha'umais ha'aratzais, through the conquering of the physical matter, than through learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. Ki dafka be'emtza usa, because it is specifically through the agency of this avodah, nasis dira laHashem, gam b'divrei harishus shel ha'adam shehem tachtoinim mamash. Because it's specifically through this avodah that even the lowest realm of our lives, divrei rishus, not holy things, not sacred things, pedestrian things, also are elevated and become part of the Dir Lo Yisbarach. And b'daim lekach, and just like this is true on the global level, similarly, yesh ma'ila b'avodah zu b'nefesh ha'adam. So there is a superior quality in this aspect of our avodah within our inner landscape. Sheba avodas habirurim, because when you're engaged in this avodah of refining physical matter, extricating the spiritual sparks that are within it, ala adam lahashkia koiches nefesh amukim yoser masher b'liman haTorah b'kiyum hamitzvos. It takes the investment of much deeper aspects of our soul into this avodah than in learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. Why? Because kedei lahagia lekach shagam kasher ein nimtzoin barba umay shel kedusha. Because in order to reach to do this avodah, when you're not within the dalit ames of kedusha, and to get to a level where all of your divrei rishus, all of your pedestrian aspects are all channeled towards shamayim, towards l'shem shamayim, va'af na'ala mikach, b'chol dorchecha de'eu, and even higher than all of your ways you know Him, Hashem, yesh lihiyos b'pashtos yirei shamayim yoser. Simply speaking, this takes a higher level of Yirei Shamayim than learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. Learning Torah and doing mitzvahs is a much more straightforward and arguably it's easier because it's a compartment. You compartmentalize, okay? Now I'm studying Torah. Now I'm doing this mitzvah. But in order to suffuse and pervade and saturate every aspect of life with holiness, it takes a much greater investment. L'shem kach hechrachi lahagia liskashrus chazaka yoser shel neshama l'kadosh baruch hu. In order to do this, you have to be able to affect a much stronger connection between the neshama and the Eibusher, asher lo techalesh gam be'ez ha'isuk b'nyanei ha'olam, that will not be weakened and compromised and neutralized even by being immersed in Inyanei Ha'olam. V'zeu atam lekach shepasach bevreshis. And so now on this level, Tzemach Tzedek's biur on kibush ha'amim, we're now in a position to understand why the Torah starts with this. Ki shleimus v'tachlis hamatara shel habriya, because the fulfillment of the stated goal of creation, asiyas dir b'tachtoinim she'ein tachton lemata himenu, making a dir b'tachtoinim in the realm where there's nothing lower misbatzas al yedei avodas habirurim avoda shel Bereshis bara. This is all this is all accomplished through avodas habirurim. The avoda that Hasidus teaches is embedded in the words Bereshis bara, the whole idea of creation. Ach ein dai behezber zeh. But in Hey, the Rebbe takes us deeper. He says, but this is still not enough. Kimin hanemar behemshach umatam pasach Bereshis sheim yomu umas ha'olam move on, because from what Rashi brings down in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, what is the reason for beginning with Bereshis? That if the other nations will say that listim atem will be able to say no. So from this is move on. From this is understood shelulei pasach Bereshis, that if it wouldn't have begun, the Torah would have begun with the words Bereshis bara. Gam ilu haya initial Bereshis mafia meuchar yosef b'Torah. Even if this limud that Hashem created the world and therefore the whole world belongs to Hashem and therefore Hashem gave us Eretz Yisrael and we are not possessing something that we got illegally. Even if this would have all appeared later in the Torah, haya adayan makaim litanas umas listim atem kamar leil. They could have still come and said, we don't want to be confused with the facts. They would have still had the same taina. Ach lefiha amor leil. But based on what we've explained above, Yotze comes out, Shaloi pasach Bereshis kedei lishlol es ataina listim atem. That the Torah doesn't begin with these words in order to obviate the claim of the nations that you are robbers. But when you learn it in consonance and through the lens of the Tzemach Tzedek, the Torah is coming to tell us the importance of avodas habirurim, Bereshis bara, al pnei malas avodas haTorah mitzvahs, which would have been through putting the mitzvah hachodesh zelachem, because hachodesh zelachem is the first mitzvah. But by putting Bereshis bara first, what is the Torah teaching us? That avodas habirurim comes even before Torah mitzvahs. And davar zeh yuvan lefi hayadua, and this will be better understood. Now the Rebbe is going to take us deeper, and he's going to explain shebinyane olam yeshnei sugim, that when it comes to the aspects of this world, of this universe, there are two large categories. Aleph, there's divrei harishos. There is that which is permissible to us. Shekivusham v'zichucham hu al yedei avoda ruchnis shel kol ma'asech l'shem shemayim u'bechol derchecha de'eu u'kemuvan limud haTorah v'kiyam ha'mitzvos. So all the permissible aspects of the world are conquered, quote unquote. They are refined through the spiritual avoda that is summed up best in the term kol ma'asecha l'shem shemayim. Everything that you do should be l'shem, should be for the sake of heaven. B'chol derchecha de'eu. You should know Hashem in all your ways, with every aspect of your being. And understandably, this is about learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. That is one large category. Beis, but there is another category. Dvarim ha'asurim. Those things that are impermissible, that are prohibited to us. Shechiyusam hi mishloish klipas hatmeis legamri. They are vivified by the shloish klipas hatmeis, by the opposite of holiness, and these are aspects of klipa she'ein bahem toiv klal, that have no transparency to kedusha, no holiness attached to it. Gam bidvarim elu, however, it is still the case that even in these aspects, yesh nitzutz kedusha hamahave umachaya umekayim oisam. They still contain, by the very dint of their existence, it has to be that they have a spark of holiness that vivifies and enlivens and allows them to remain in existence. Sharei kol davar kayim rak al yidei kedusha. Because anything that exists only via kedusha. Ela she'ara kedusha shel hanitzaites mustar behem legamrei. However, the holiness that is contained within them, the light of holiness that is contained, is completely obfuscated, completely eclipsed. Efshar. It is possible, although not usually, to refine these aspects rak ba'ofen yotze min haklal, in an anomalous fashion, al yidei bitul beroiv, or ubeshishim. Sometimes something unholy, something unkosher becomes nullified in roiv, in it, like 1 in 2, or it's batul beshishim, or even more dramatically, zdainos nasu kezachiyos alidei tshuva me'ahava, through the highest level of teshuva, sins that were done even in premeditated fashion can become merits, ukedaima, and the like. Aval b'derech klal, but generally speaking, ein hem yicholim lehizdachech v'la'alois lekedusha v'lachein hem dvarim hasurim. Under normal circumstances, these are not things that can be refined and be elevated to kedusha, and therefore they are referred to as dvarim ha'asurim. They are incarcerated in klipa. They can't be extricated. They cannot be freed. They're asurim. They're tied up. They're imprisoned. Ulafizeh. And so now we can understand the claim, the spiritual claim, in a more dramatic and urgent fashion. Yesh loimer shahatayna ha'ikris shalistim atem. Now we can understand that the main claim, listim atem, that you are robbers, that you are embezzlers, biruchnias, michuvenes klape dvarim elu, is intended towards the aspects that are normally asurim, that the Yidden through their avodah actually transform and transmute into kedusha. Asher legabehem yesh makom l'tayna zulafi atayra. Because vis-a-vis this category of the dvarim hasurim that come through the avodah of tshuva into kedusha, even al pitayra there's a claim. Ki Yehudi hanoyeg b'derech hatayra eina kosher lebir hadvarim hasurim. Because when a Jew is acting in the derech hatayra, they have no connection to these aspects and to their refinement. Because the way of the Torah tells us, you should avert yourself, you should remove yourself from these aspects, you should push away all of these dvarim asurim. Koloimar, lefi hatara ein dvarim elu kavyachol b'shusha shel Yehudi. This is to say that according to the Torah, these things are not, as it were, in our domain, Elahim b'reshus haklipa, but rather they belong in the reshus of the energy that is counter to kedusha. Ulefichach, and therefore, if ilu Bereshis haya kasuv la'achar chodesh, if this pasuk and the story of creation would have been written after hachodesh hazeh lachem, va'af yoser mizeh lo haya tzarich lahaschal Torah ela mechodesh lachem mitzad Torah atzma nidrash haschalasa tiyeh b'chodesh. In other words, from the perspective of the Torah, it should have started with hachodesh. But if that would have been a case, it would come out. In other words, we would learn shehayasa kayemes avodas kibush ubirun rak b'derech shaliman haTorah v'kiyum mitzvos, that the way that we are to comport ourselves in this world, that we should engage in kibush, in conquest and in refinement, is only through learning Torah and doing mitzvos. V'az hayaha inishal kavashtem artzes shivas goyim. And then it would come out that taka, it would be gezela for us to engage in these aspects of the universe. So this claim that a Jew has nothing to do with klipa and has no right to be mezachech, those aspects of the universe, is obliterated by the fact that the Torah begins with Bereshis. Omnam, it's true, mitzad Torah ein hanitzayta shebedvarim hasurim yicholim lizbarer. It's true, it's all true, that mitzad the Torah, there's no way to deal with these inyanim. There's no way to elevate them. There's no way to refine them. There's no way to conquer them. Ach mitzad HaKadosh Baruch Hu atzmai sheme'al l'Torah. But when you're talking about from the Eibishter's perspective, which transcends Torah, nitan hakayach la'asiyas tshuva. The Eibishter gave the kayach of tshuva. V'tshuva mi'ava garemes l'kach shazdoinos nasim kezachiyos. And when a yid does tshuva mi'ava, actual premeditated sins and trespasses and transgressions can be transformed into merits. K'maimer Chazal, Sharak kasher shalu l'Kadosh Baruch Hu, this very famous medrash, that when the Eibishter was asked, different from what was answered by other entities, what is the punishment of the one who sins? Amar lam, the Eibishter answered, Yaseh tshuva v'yischaper lo. Let the sinner do tshuva and he will be forgiven. Not let him be punished, not let him bring karbonos, etc., etc. But the Eibishter says, let him do tshuva and he will be atoned for. This was not the answer al pi Torah. If you look into the fascinating medrash, and because the Eibishter transcends Torah, and the Eibishter gave us koyach hatshuva, that's how we're mizbarer these aspects. That's how we effectuate the kibush eretz sheva ha'ummos. It belongs to the 7 nations of Klippa. Sharei mishum shemimcha hakol. Because everything comes from the Eibishter, everything belongs to the Eibishter. Gam hadvarim hasurim heim beba'alusoi shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They belong under the jurisdiction. They are owned, as it were, by the Eibishter. V'kiyumam v'chayusam heim be'emtzos nitzotes hakadusha shebehem. And they are in existence, and they are vivified and allowed to exist only through the agency of the nitzotes kedusha that the Eibishter put into them. V'chivon shatzmusa yizbarach nalis mehag. And because the atzmos of the Eibishter is higher than all of the parameters and all of the delineations of obfuscation and revelation, harigam nitzaitis kedusha elu. So even these nitzaitis that fell into dvarim asurim, shebahem ha'ar elaki mustar lechalutin, that within them the godly light is completely obscured. Muchadais im HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They are still united with the Eibishter. Umisham, and from that point of unity, Neveya Hakayach La'asei Tshuva v'lezichuch nitzaitis elu v'lis alem l'kedusha. And from that unity flows the possibility and the strength to do tshuva and to be mevarer, to refine those nitzaitis, and to elevate them to kedusha. But mishum v'Torah or, but because Torah is our light, Torah illuminates every truth. Mishum shegilui kol inyonei hakadusha hu be'emtzaos haTorah, because the revelation of all things having to do with holiness is revealed through the agency of the Torah. Okay, let's take a moment to just absorb this. That anything that transcends the Torah is still only known to us via the Torah. So there are inyanim that transcend the Torah, but how do we know about that? Only from the Torah. Ne'emar v'huvar gam inin hatshuva. And so it's, even though tshuva transcends the Torah tells us about and explains the inin of tshuva, birur hanitzaitis shel hadvarim hasurim al yidei haTorah. that through the Torah it's explained to us how we can be mevared and itzitzis even in dvarim hasurim. V'zeu hahezber lehevdel shebein shnei hanusuchim shel Maimar Rabbi Yitzchak. And now the Rebbe is going to zoom in on the two different terms, the two nuschos that Rabbi Yitzchak used, Ashahuvu le'il b'sif aleph, that the Rebbe brought down right away from Rashi. Because there are two things, ma tam kosav mi Bereshis, and then ma tam posach b'Bereshis. Both of these terms the Rebbe explained to us are different than what the other midrashim use, but what do these two different terms point to? L'gabe biru divrei harishus dai ilu kosav mi Bereshis. In order to bring our attention to refining inyanim that are divrei rishus, that are in the realm of permissible, it would have been enough just to say that the Torah begins from Bereshis. She'inyan zeh yichasei bichlal haTorah. Ki amnam gam la'avodah zu yesh yisron al pnei avodas haTorah v'mitzvos. Because in truth, as I've explained to us, avodas habirurim has a superlative quality over Torah and mitzvos. So the Torah has to start with this. But the Torah, irrespective of the fact that it would seem that Torah and mitzvahs is higher than this, but the Torah itself reveals how important this is and how it comes before everything else. Aval bir hadvarim ha'asurim. But then you have the second category, the refinement of things that are impermissible, that are prohibited. Eina al pisei dehater klal, and this is bechlal not within the rubric of Torah. Ki af ha'omer echte ba'ashuv over avera mischayev ba'inish behetem lefgam, because the person who says I'll sin and then I'll do tshuva is over avera, and he's chayav in the punishment. Ki hu poigem, because he creates a flaw in his neshama, in the world entire. V'lachein legabe inyan zeh shel kibush artzei shiva goyim hechrachi she'hadavar yikasev b'psichas haTorah. So it has to be written. It has to be kosav b'Torah, because the Torah has to tell us that this is a very important avodah. But legabe, the things that are isurim, that we also have to do kibush of, for that, it can't just be included in the Torah, it has to open the entire Torah. Because the power to engage in this type of refinement, it flows from a level that transcends the Torah. So the allusion to this inyan, appears in the Torah as an opening to the entire Torah. Zayin. V'zeu ha'hezber l'divrei Rabbi Yitzchak u'ma tam pasach b'Bereshis mishum koyach masav higid la'amay losas lahem nachalas goyim. Now we're in a position to understand Rabbi Yitzchak's words and the pasuk that he brings down to bolster his limud, and for which reason did the Torah open with Bereshis, in order, and now he quotes Tehillim, that the Eibishter told his nation about the strength of his deeds, to give to them the inheritance of the nations. Livnei Yisrael, Amoy, Nimshach, to the children of Israel, his nation, was brought down. Higid, Lashon Hamshacha, telling is a term that connotes to draw down, the nimsar, and was imparted, koyach ma'asav, the strength of his deeds, hakoyach, v'nitzos elakisha yesh b'chol ma'asav. The Eibishter gave us, transmitted to us, imparted to us, the koyach and the spark of holiness that is in everything. Shere Yisrael v'Kutchabrichu hu kula chad, because Bnei Yisrael and Hashem are one thing. Yoiser me'asher is achdus haTorah HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is one of the big one of the big, the radical, maybe the most radical idea of Hasidus. It used to be that it was believed that a Jew, in order to connect to Hashem, has to do so through Torah mitzvahs. Comes Hasidus and reveals that the achdus of a Yid with the Eibishter transcends even the achdus of Torah with the Eibishter. There's a direct root. Kedivrei Chazal, sheYisrael kadmu l'Torah. Bnei Yisrael arose in Hashem's thoughts before the Torah. V'lechein yitan liYisrael hakoyach shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu sheme'al l'Torah. Me'edika eisias here. Therefore, Bnei Yisrael were given koyches of the Eibishter that transcend the Torah. Le'inyan hatshuva, that through the agency of tshuva, that even premeditated transgressions become merits. But still and all, because everything that we finite human beings, inclusive of our spiritual avodah, has to be in some organized fashion, this also is true. Even in tshuva, which transcends all metrics and all rubrics, there still has to be a seder. Betchilas havoida kasher dargas hatshuva ba'adam atzma hi ba'ofen shehu chash alav she'alav lihis natek min hara. In the beginning, when he's at the level of tshuva, where the person himself feels the imperative to disengage from evil, hare hatshuva. So the tshuva, in the way that he is working, in the way that he feels it, it is an inyan of gizela, of stealing, quote unquote. Olav ligzol kavyachol inyan hashayach l'reshus haklipa. It's like he is exporting something from the reshus of klipa to kedusha. So he's stealing it away from Klippa to bring it to Kedusha. That's Betchilas Havodah. Achla Acher Mikein. But later, Kasher Hu Magia L'Darga Hanalis Yoseh B'Tshuva, when he reaches a higher level of Tshuva, V'Haruach Tashuv El Halikim Asher Nisana, then it's not about going away from the bad. It's about, this pasuk is from Keheles, it's about the spirit returning to Hashem who gave it. Who chash b'tshuvasai me'ein shiva l'sharshei u'mekare ad le'elikim asher nisana. The lower level of tshuva is running away from the evil. The higher level is running towards our source. He feels the return to the shayrish u'makar, to the source, to Hashem. Sharshay u'makar harishain. Ki meir by shayrish nishmasai kefishu mu'uchad emelikim asher nisana. Because now is illumined in him the source of his soul, which is always united with Hashem. And kach gam legabe bira nitzaitis hakadusha shebidvarim hasurim al yidei shuvasai. And this is expressed also in the avodah of bira nitzaitis that are in inyanim that are prohibited, that are nizbarer through tshuva. Sha'az, that at that point in the tshuva process, ein ze inyan shel gezela. This is not about stealing it from klipa, ela mimcha hakol, but it's rather on the level of everything belongs to you, Hashem. There's no two reshusim. I don't have to export from one and import to another because it's all mimcha. And the whole idea of the sparks of divinity coming down in general, it was from the very beginning for the purpose of this ascension. It was a destruction in order to build. It was excavation so you could lay the foundation. Sha'Yehudi yashiv v'yala isam l'shorsham u'mekoyrim al yidei tshuva, that the Jews should return them and should elevate them to their source through teshuvah. Bal yidei kach, and through this, mis'aleh ha'Yehudi l'darga hanal shel tshuva, and through this avodah, the Jew is elevated to this very exalted level of tshuva, about which the Rambam paskin shebamakim shebali tshuva oimdin ein tzadikim gemurim yicholim la'amoid, that in the place where bali tshuva stand, a tzaddik gomer can't actually alight there. V'lachein gam, and therefore we have this limud in the Zohar, tzadikaya asve b'tiyufta, that tzaddikim will return in tshuva, because tshuva is a higher level even than the level of a tzaddik gomer. U'b'hairas chazal l'chol Yehudi u'legabi kol yom kol yamav b'tshuva. And like the Gemara says, that every Jew should be engaged, every Jew, every day, in the avodah of teshuvah. Maybe we should hope that we should be able to complete this avodah already, and we should see now mamash bias hamashiach tzedkenu. We can't wait any longer. Again, the Eibusha should send a refuah to all the chaylim, to all the wounded. Hashem should return everyone to the embrace of their family, and Hashem should return us all in manifest form to His embrace. B'fias Mashiach tzedkenu now, mamash. You want to end the recording, Tzippa? Maybe people want to share things.
Amen.